Hello, welcome back. I just want to talk today about how in previous video I mentioned about losing the majority of my hair and how that happened, what led up to that event, what was the precursor to like quite dramatic hair loss over a short period of time. And we're not talking like patches of hair coming out or anything like that. It was just a very widespread overall thinning of my hair. Which resulted in knocking my confidence quite dramatically. I ended up having to cut all of my hair off. It was like 1/2 centimetre all over, and I'm naturally like a gingery blonde, so it weren't good luck. let's just say that. So yeah, what led to that was veganism. It really absolutely ravaged my system, and I've followed so many diet plans of it. I weren't particularly doing it because I wanted to lose weight. I've never been particularly fussed about that side of things. I started the veganism so that I could feel overall inner, outer body health, fitness and those things. And I also entered onto a fitness journey as well, which I think contributed, especially when I sought medical advice. You know, that I'll detail that later, but that's exactly what they thought as well. So when I hit 40, I had, let's say, my midlife crisis and decided that I wanted to be fitter, better, stronger, all those type of things than I were currently. Not than I were when I was in 20s, because I know that's not particularly achievable, or at least it weren't for me. And I knew that just running around after, X amount of children weren't quite doing it, weren't fitting the bill. Going to work, it were an office job at that time, so I was a director of a care company. There was nothing really keeping me fit and well during my day. And then when I was coming home, my diet were all over the place. I was just eating kid meals with kids, quick stuff, really fast, throw it in the oven, get it back out again. Yeah, and it definitely started to take its toll. It took its toll first and foremost. I noted it in my skin. My skin looked dull, I looked pale, I looked a little bit lacking in just general vivacity. And my husband kept saying, like, "Oh, what are you doing? What's changed?" But I think he didn't realise that this whole contribution of doing less, eating more processed, not very good for you foods were really starting to take its toll on me, and it was quite a visible impact. And my skin got greasy as well, and I didn't like that. I've never had greasy skin. In fact, I've always had the opposite problem. I've always been very dry skinned. So I wasn't feeling that whole transformation that were happening. So I embarked on this journey, and I watched a ton of YouTube videos, which you'll see is a common theme for me. I generally research the hell out of something best I can, using real life takes on things, and then I'll run with it. But what I definitely do, and I know this, is if I've got an idea of something that I think is going to be good for me, I will omit all bad news, all bad press, anything that negates the thought that I've got in my head at that time. And I think a lot of people do this, but I definitely didn't. I did it to excess. So I took all the most extreme versions and decided I was going to do all those. So, I had an app that tracked my calories per day, but it was a vegan app as well. So, that you go getting the right amount of nuts, nutrients, all those types of things, proteins and other bits and bats. But because I don't have a very big appetite, I've found it very, very difficult to meet that criteria. So then I went on a deficit, doing like 800 calories a day, which is mad, very small amount for somebody of my size. I'm 5'11", 10 if you ask me at end of day. And I'm a relatively slim, sort of athletic build, but I definitely needed more calories than that for me. So in addition to that, I went and I sought advice of a personal trainer. Me and my husband both signed up for this journey. And she was great, I've got to be fair. I mean, she was so motivating. She was of a certain age that made you feel a little bit more like it was achievable. You know, if she can do it, I can do it, those type of things came across. And my husband was suffering with his back at the time, so he really had to have like a tentative training program, but she delivered. She was really good. But I know myself, because I'm very competitive. I give myself hard goals, I give myself hard lines. When I were younger, I ran professionally and I boxed and I did all sorts of stuff, you know, because this is what I do. Because I can't do anything, just, you know, try it. No, I've got to have the full package. I've got to do it to its death, or my death. So anyway, long story real short, started this whole fitness regime, going to gym, going to personal trainer. We'd actually got to a point where I think we were doing a bit of burnout, because we was 6 days at the gym, 6 days doing swimming, CrossFit, training regimes that the lady had given us from personal training. We was tracking our progress on apps and then trying to beat that progress. We were doing over 20,000 steps a day, just, you know, general. And if we didn't meet the 20,000 steps a day, we had to go on a walk to make sure that we got those 20,000 steps in, or a run, or whatever. And so it became all consuming. We made a gym in the house, we had kettlebells in the garden and a big CrossFit rack. We just went nuts. And I'm all about fitness, and I still believe that you know, I do like to go to the gym, I do like to keep fit, I do like that feeling, but I just don't want the competitive side of it anymore. And I don't want to feel like I'm going to be in the next CrossFit challenge, or, you know, no, I just need to stop that for my own health and everybody else's sanity around me. So anyway, in addition to that, I was doing this vegan diet, and 6 months in, I noticed I had some really, really flat days. I weren't able to eat the amount that the diet was setting me. I was really finding it difficult, so I started to eat more of the things that I felt would make an impact, so like nuts and pulses and all those type of things. But it just weren't enough, and I lost a dramatic amount of weight. I started to look a bit skeletal, which, you know, it's not a good look, is it? I started to find that me personal bests in training were getting lower and lower and lower. So I started to really get annoyed with myself that I'd just not got the energy. I couldn't complete the routines. I was really finding it difficult to just get up and do anything. And then I was running around after kids and going to work. Me concentration were all over the place. Everything felt a lot harder. So I went to the doctors, because I felt that, you know, am I hitting some milestone in my life, or have I got an underlying infection? It's just something going on. So I went to the doctor, and they did a bunch of blood tests and cancer screening and all sorts of things. And it came around about the time when all those tests were going on, I started to notice a dramatic loss of coverage of my hair. So my hair used to be, I've always had fine hair, but I've had tons of it, so it's always looked thick but very silky, fine hair. And once I'd noticed that crazy loss, I made an appointment. I went back to the doctors and I explained like what was going on, and I showed him what was going on. And at this point, I mean, it looked worse than it probably were, because I'd got long-ish hair with half the coverage of the hair on my head, so it was really like stuck flat. I mean, it looked terrible. And he gave it a real good exam, and he said there was nothing like on my follicles or anything like that. Everything looked really healthy, he says, but the one thing he said that he did want to discuss was my bloods that had come back. And he said that I'd got these deficiencies in certain vitamins and minerals and other things like that, and he said a lot of these contribute to hair and nail and teeth and all those, you know, lovely things. So he mentioned to me that that was something that I really should look at, that's a change I have to make in my diet, otherwise I am going to potentially lose the majority of my hair and just keep a downward spiral into this unhealthy, feeling really like lethargic, everything just feeling pretty, well, for want of a better word. And so I made that change, and I cut all my hair off, started wearing wigs, felt horrendous. Then I owned it. I got to a point where I was just, I didn't want to hide behind the wig, and I didn't want to hide that from the children neither, because I felt like as a mum, you've got a very unique opportunity for those children that are in your care, be it your own or somebody else's, or however that works. You have a very unique perspective on them, the one that you can portray to them how you can overcome things that, society might deem to be less than desirable. So I got rid of the wig and owned this really, really, really short, manly haircut. And I did that for a period of about 6 months-ish, while it were all thickening back up, as I'd improved my diet. Appetite, by the way, were horrendous for getting back after I'd been on the veganism sort of runway. It's so hard having to retrain your body to accept things. I had, sorry for this, but I had diarrhea and illness and sickness every time I ate meat. I felt like absolute for hours afterwards, and then I'd feel okay again, and I wouldn't want to eat then because I was like, I'm gonna feel terrible. But yeah, I did, and I improved, and I went and had another blood test, and the levels had all sort of coming back in a line. I'm around about 6 weeks into the recovery, if you like, from what I'd done to my body. I lowered the intensity training, I took away the aspect of the CrossFit training, and I looked purely at just keeping mobile. I don't want to sustain an injury that takes me off my feet completely by not being mobile enough, by not being stretchy enough, by not having that elasticity in the system that allows me to bounce back. So when I did those things, I felt a much larger improvement. And after the 6-week mark, and still up to this day, we're probably a year when I've been back on a full meat diet now. And I feel so much better, but I know that the energy levels that I had before I started this whole process were much higher. Whether this is age or, combinating factors of other things, I don't know, but this is how I feel, and this is what I want to relate to you guys. That I think it's really important to follow health goals and to have these aspirations to be, a better version of yourself, or just happy with yourself, maintain the version of yourself, anything like that. But I think if anybody does it to excess like I did, that it's a really punishing process for the majority of us. And then once I'd started to realise this, and I'd realised that what I did was I went completely left-wing with watching everything about it and only following the information that I wanted to follow and I wanted to hear, not listening to anything else. But once I started to open myself up a little bit, and I understood a little bit more about the whole process and how to complete the process without making yourself feel, like I felt, then I started to understand a lot better where I went wrong. But now I've scared myself off of trying that again, because the last thing I want is to go down any of those paths that I went down, where I was feeling so tired, I felt so ill, I couldn't put weight on, I couldn't maintain weight, I couldn't build muscle, and I wanted to build muscle, but I couldn't build muscle because there was nothing there. There was nothing in my stores that could feed those muscles as I was trying to grow them. And that whole thing of once my hair had started to fail as well, which I think was the last straw. I just thought, what am I doing? There's many face palms I didn't pass, but that was the biggest one, I think, for a long time. Just silly route to go down for me, for my age, for what I thought I was going to achieve and everything else. I don't know what I thought it was going to be, but it must have been something amazing. So yeah, I wanted to share that with you. I wanted to share the fact that I do make mistakes. Yeah, I'm 43, but Christ, I make more mistakes than most, I'd say. And that's probably because I put myself out there more than most as well. I don't tend to shy away from change. I don't tend to really weigh up the pros and cons of something before I do it. I research stuff a lot, but like I say, I have blinkers on for that sometimes, and will only take the information that I want because that fits the narrative at the time, that fits what I want to do, and feeds into that. I don't think I'm alone with the way I do these things, and it's definitely frustrating being a bystander to it. I know this, my family tell me all the time. But I did it, and I'm here recording what went wrong and what went right. I had some positives from it, and the positives were that I have stayed really mobile, I am flexible, I have got better muscle control and form. But the flip side of that was that I feel so much less energetic than I did, and I don't want to push myself for fear of things not going quite right for me. And I'm hoping that goes with time. I think it will. I think it's just one of those things that we all, you get a natural fear once you've been bit. You don't want to go back there and pet the offending article. But yeah, that's all I wanted to share today, and I hope that it's resonated for some of you, and that people understand where I was coming from with that. And if not, I tried. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you again. Bye.